This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. I'm John Shegerian. I'm so honored to have with us today Tonie Hansen. She's the Senior Director of Corporate Responsibility for NVIDIA. Welcome to the Impact Podcast, Tonie.
Thanks, John. I'm really excited to be here.
And for our listeners and viewers, just to find NVIDIA, you can go to www.nvidia.com. I have your website up, Tonie, and we're going to be talking about some of the things on your website and other things I've learned and that you've learned along the way as well. But before we get talking about NVIDIA, talk a little bit about Tonie Hansen. How did you even get here, Tonie? And tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about your own personal journey.
Yeah, happy to. It wasn't a straightforward journey. I think this is my third career iteration. I started out in the hospitality and special events field. So that was kind of my focus in college, marketing, business, but with that, that specialty in mind. So right before I got into tech, I was working in Boston at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston and doing client events and holiday parties, medical conferences. And then I realized that, in that career, you've got this executive at the top, and then you've got all these other people kind of competing for that one spot, and just didn't feel like opportunities to me. And I thought maybe it's a good time to go back to school. So when I was in business school, I dove in kind of feet first into the tech world. I was, relatively a latecomer compared to some folks in the tech space. So for me, just getting that, hardcore indoctrination the first year of business school was incredible. And I actually signed up through the marketing, the MBA internship program to go work at a tech company. And that was really, from there, I just kind of jumped off. So that was career number two, getting to work for companies, in Boston, in California, being able to help brands who were just starting to come online. These were some of the earlier days of the internet, help them understand how to connect with their customers online, how to engage with them, how to get them to buy something, how to, we used to do contests were a big thing in the early days. We had all those, crazy tools that we all kind of roll our eyes at now, but that was all fun, unexplored, interesting territory back then. So I was able to work with startups and a couple of big companies to convince those brands to work with us, either use our technology or come to our site, and to build those brand relationships, those relationships that they wanted to with their customers. And that was wonderful for 8 years. It was glamorous, got to go all over the world and do really cool stuff with the latest technology. But it's just started feeling a little hollow for me, I think, because my personal life was becoming a lot more, volunteer focused. I was doing a lot more in the environmental space. This was a few years before the beginning of the Iraq War, and I was kind of protesting, and my friends were starting to notice this change in me, and I decided that I really wanted to work and do something, kind of more meaningful in this space. I was out to dinner with a couple girlfriends one night. One of them had worked for a startup that was very successful. She did quite well. She started to go work for nonprofits to do development for them. And she said, I go to these big companies in Silicon Valley to ask them for millions of dollars. There are people inside those companies that give millions of dollars away to charities for a living. I said, that would be the most amazing job in the world. And our friend Michelle said, oh my God, my husband Scott is hiring for that job at NVIDIA. And so boom, 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 a few weeks later. So being able to come in and build from scratch, always have loved that. Being able to solve a lot of the problems that come up in the environmental and social space, have worked on the first iteration of the company's climate program, have worked on our internal and external diversity programs. Now I do a lot of reporting externally around all this work to investors, to customers. And so it's just been a progression of many different things over the past few years. But to help build the program has just been, such a great honor.
So you joined NVIDIA about 2006.
2006.
I know NVIDIA is a global leader in artificial intelligence in hardware and software, and that you take on some of the world's hardest problems. But how does that mean, practically speaking, in terms of how you deploy this hardware and software technologies, and what kind of problems that are hard that you guys are really solving for a layman like me?
Yeah. The idea of solving hard problems is really core to our culture. So it really helps us focus as a company on where we can be profitable, but also where we can have significant societal impact. And those things have always gone hand in hand for us as a company. When we look at hard problems, we first identify the problem. It's often something in the social sphere, medicine, general science. Those are two areas where we apply this process to, really frequently. And then we determine how hard the problem is, because if it isn't a hard problem, someone else is likely already solving it, or they're going to solve it. And that would have, diminished business value for us. And then we ask, do we have unique capabilities to solve it? This is fundamentally a technology question as a technology company. And is it something that our incredibly powerful accelerated computing technology is well suited for? Can we contribute meaningfully to the solving of that problem? And if we can't get a resounding yes for all three of those things, it's likely not going to be a strong area of focus for us. So when we look at things like some of these intractable societal problems that are out there, medicine and disease is a big one that comes to mind. Science is always looking for ways to prevent, identify, and treat disease. And until the application of accelerated computing, the technology was often the limiter to how much progress you could actually make. And in order to tackle these problems, you need to study them. You've got to assess massive amounts of data, often in disparate data sets, often in combination with each other. And you don't want to wait weeks, months, or years to get to the results. And so our technology is really uniquely suited to take massive amounts of data in these areas, accelerate the scientific processes that kind of underlie them. An example of that would be drug discovery, right? Whether you're evaluating whether certain molecules of a drug will connect with proteins or genes in the body. And when you apply accelerated computing to that process, that not only speeds it up dramatically, so it happens more quickly, but it actually speeds up the number of targets that you can identify. Climate change is a perfect example of another intractable issue where we believe that our technology can have an impact. So understanding the changing climate means evaluating the past and making predictions about the future. You need data to do this and powerful ways to compute that data so that you can show how past behaviors or patterns will actually impact future results. So the area of climate is becoming a growing focus for NVIDIA.
That's so exciting. And I want to go back to climate in a second, Tonie. But when you brought up the medicine issue, I happened to be lucky enough to be in a room in Armenia in October of 2019 when the CEO of a company that I never heard of before, named Moderna, was talking about the application of AI to the pharmaceutical and drug manufacturing world. And what he was saying was absolutely brilliant. But being a non-medical person, I said, I wonder if this is really going to have any real life applications. And of course, fast forward 6 months later, when he broke the code of the pandemic and of COVID-19 using AI, I realized he was really prescient when he was speaking back in October of 19. So I saw personally his vision and heard his vision and then saw it in action. So it's just so fascinating. So let's go back to climate. What are some of the applications of some of your great and important technologies when it comes to AI and hardware and software that you're using to help, like you said, fix or solve the historically intractable problem of climate change?
We have seen some incredible instances where accelerated computing technology is having an impact across the entire cycle of climate change, from climate research to carbon reduction technologies to mitigating the impacts of carbon and adapting to climate change, and which is working to restore ecosystems that have been impacted by extreme weather events, for example. So again, all intractable problems with a technology solution. And for climate, it is the case for many other areas of focus. We like to put our technology into the hands of people who deeply understand the science behind those areas so that they can drive the innovation. We consider ourselves the enablers of that innovation. So in that research space, where it's necessary to look at data from the past to understand what's in store for us in the future, the acceleration that we've seen here has been the application of AI. So climate scientists are using NVIDIA's accelerated computing technology to model climate scenarios and predict weather patterns. And by applying AI to that, they can now actually model weather forecasting 4 to 5 times magnitude, 4 to 5 magnitudes faster than by traditional methods. And so when you think about that speed, getting that data into the hands of people more quickly so they can make decisions that ultimately on the weather side of things save lives, that's a huge impact there. In the area of reduction, the goal is to never generate a ton of CO2, right? And examples of this are companies in the renewable energy space, companies that are using NVIDIA technology to build more efficient wind turbines, to physically design them to be more aerodynamic and generate more wind energy by using our technology and computational fluid dynamics to do that. And there's other companies that are using AI at the edge of these wind turbine farms to monitor the farms and to ensure that the turbines are operating 24/7 and that they're being properly maintained. On the mitigation front, which is a real burgeoning area, NVIDIA scientists have worked with leading institutions to use AI to model optimal sites for carbon sequestration. So after you've captured that carbon out of the atmosphere, you want to store it away someplace, and you need to know when you're storing it into that medium, how quickly can you do that, and how efficiently can you do that? And so AI can actually help you understand what's going on underneath the ground and how to get that carbon stored in the most efficient way possible. And then that last phase, that adaptation side of things, This is about ecosystems, biodiversity, building resiliency. One of the areas where we have seen incredible innovation is from startups. We have a startup network called the Inception Network. We've got 10,000 plus startups using our technology where we provide training and marketing resources and exposure to them. And we actually support numerous companies in Inception that are using AI across all aspects of climate. Can I give you a few examples? Because they're incredibly cool.
100%. I'd love some. And just for our listeners and viewers who've just joined us, we're so excited and honored to have with us Tonie Hansen. She's the Senior Director of Corporate Responsibility for NVIDIA. You can find NVIDIA at www.nvidia.com. And also, I want to mention, Tonie, that your corporate responsibility report's coming out, your annual corporate responsibility, social responsibility report's coming out this month in June, and we're going to talk about that in a little while. Tell us some specific examples of some of these great applications that are going to help make our world a better and more sustainable place.
Absolutely. So specifically in the startup world, in conservation, there's a company in Kenya, and they have created an AI-powered camera trap that can identify wild animals, vehicles, and civilians in a scenario. So they can send alerts of poaching threats to on-duty wildlife rangers. As we know, poaching is a huge issue. You don't often have the resources in countries, in conservation parks to monitor these cameras, but being able to use AI to do that, is a really powerful way to protect some of those animals that are really at risk.
Yeah.
And, this same startup has another initiative, talk about another species at risk, talking about bees. And so this company actually has an initiative that monitors bee colonies. And they do that with a range of sensors. So they're capturing acoustic data, vibrations, temperature, humidity within the beehives. Again, disparate data sources, massive amounts of data. What can you predict from all of those different things in play? And so this platform that the company in Kenya has created can really help beekeepers monitor their colony's health, and they can fend off threats from, bacteria or virus or from an animal or even from, a human. Oceans are an incredible opportunity for us to look at things like carbon sinks. And so there's a startup in Germany that's monitoring the ocean floors. They're monitoring surrounding coastal ecosystems so they can find natural carbon sinks. And this will help scientists understand how we can better, leverage those sinks for storing even more carbon. I mean, there's a million examples, John. We could spend the entire podcast just talking about startups using AI in this space across, the entire phase. But it's really thrilling to every day kind of learn about new companies that are using our technology to tackle some of these problems.
And these are some of the most these are, like you said, not only were intractable historically, but they're paramount issues in terms of if we really want to be a surviving planet in the centuries to come. I mean, if they're not solved now, we're almost at a break point. So
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the amount of animals that will lose, the need to get the carbon currently generated, out in the emissions in the air out of the air and stored away somewhere. These are huge, critical, big things that can have a tremendous impact. So seeing so many people apply themselves to it with a technology solution, which we of course love, just makes us so proud as a company.
So, Tonie, you've been there now at NVIDIA for 16 or so years. So you've seen an evolution in not only the company, but also in your role, your important role. So one role is that you lead the charitable foundation at NVIDIA, right? And that's sort of, or you did, or something that was part of your role?
Yep, I helped to build that program from scratch, and I like to say that it's in the hands of an incredibly capable colleague of mine right now, and actually she's doing amazing things with it.
So that's to me, that's outward facing. So now talk about the inward. And when a company like yours is solving such hard problems and working on hard problems, it creates culturally, my experience, it creates an atmosphere and a culture that goes way beyond a paycheck, that the employees get excited because really the mission is almost as important, if not more important, than just, paycheck. We all need paychecks to pay the bills and keep our lights on and pay for gas, of course, and food. But your mission is unbelievably important and fascinating. Talk a little bit about how you get to attract and retain employees because of all the great work that you do. And part of that deals with the messaging that you do on the important work that NVIDIA is up to.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the people piece, because I've talked a ton about technology, but the technology is nothing without the people behind it, right?
Right.
And so NVIDIA, we talk about wanting to be a place where people can come and do their life's work, right? Mm-hmm. Where people who want to work on hard problems go, because they fundamentally believe that technology can change the world and it can make progress with many of these intractable things that we've been talking about. The list of people who come from just really incredible, unique areas is huge. I'll give you a few examples. We have on our team within the company a former cardiothoracic surgeon who's now the head of medical AI. We have climate scientists who worked in the public sector who just got to deeply appreciate and were so passionate about the power of our technology to help climate scientists came inside so that they could direct us in a path of helping climate scientists specifically with our technology and making that available externally. We have Academy Award winners who have joined the company, who have used our technology, who have won those awards for using our technology in the film and entertainment space. We have employees who won their very first Academy Award as an employee of the company using the technology in the film and entertainment space. Yeah, it's incredible. We've got hundreds of researchers, working on building this energy efficient technology that would love to talk to you more about, that is enabling customers to use a lot less carbon. And there's 20,000 plus unique stories of people who are drawn here because of their fundamental belief in the technology and to be part of that in a way that they can most make a contribution.
And those 20,000 employees are mostly based in the United States, or are they dispersed around the world?
All around the world. I can't even remember the number of offices that we have. I think it's on our website. I feel there's like 60 offices, multiple countries throughout every major region in the world. So it is, truly a truly global kind of mindset and belief system within the company around that solving of hard problems and coming here to do that work.
Tonie, I'm going to date myself a little bit with regards to this analogy I'm going to draw, but I know your annual corporate responsibility report is coming out this month. And so I can imagine for you, it's sort of a Sophie's choice on what you would like to highlight from that report, so to tease our listeners and viewers to what to expect. So can you share just some of your favorite stories that you highlighted and that are going to be shown in this annual report that's coming out?
Sure, absolutely. And I do get the Sophie's Choice reference, but you might need to explain it to some other folks just in case, because
Exactly.
I'm probably closer to your age than you might think. So this is the 12th year of our report. And every year, we really relish the opportunity to tell that story of how the people and the technology together kind of make that difference. And you got a sneak peek at some of that today.
Right.
We talked about the energy efficiency of our products and the story I told around the energy savings if everyone switched to our technology, as well as how our technology is being used in all those different phases of climate change. So that's a super important focus for us. Another highlight is trustworthy AI. So AI is just an incredible tool, and recognizing that the technology can have a profound impact on people in the world. We have done work internally to enable transparency and trust in our AI development. And so this is specifically around how we design and deploy data sets and models and other tools. And so we want to tell that story because it's important to be transparent around that area. And we've done a lot of work in that space since our last report went out. And we're not just responsible for the technology itself, but there's also a feeling that we need to ensure that people all over the world have an opportunity to benefit from it and to actually develop with it. So we tell the story of our AI Nations team, which is forging relationships with emerging and established countries and helping to bring AI to those countries, as well as our emerging chapters team, which brings education and support to countries whose communities are traditionally underrepresented in tech. And they've just done some incredibly impactful work in accelerating the use of our technology throughout Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, many regions throughout the world. I just want to make a final note on that, providing opportunity to traditional underrepresented communities. So that really forms the heart of our responsibility around the company that we build from a people perspective. So this year in the report, we're putting more effort into really emphasizing how diversity and inclusion actions are embedded across the entire company, because you can't have this, one person that directs all that effort. People need to feel it. It needs to be part of their everyday management, how we bring people into the company, how we support those people, how we promote them, how we develop them. That can't just be a separate group that's doing that. So we talk a lot about that integration story. And, I was fortunate enough to work on our D&I programs in their super early days. So it's just heartening for me to see how big the team has become, to see that we have a multi-year plan, we're working the plan, and that our initial feedback from these very consistent pulse surveys that we do with employees indicate that they feel included, they feel supported, they feel that they belong, and that NVIDIA is the place where they want to come and do their life's work.
Wow. And that report will be coming out in June of 2022.
That's right.
And people can find that on the corporate social responsibility area on your website. Is that not correct?
Absolutely. Can't miss it.
Yeah. So let's real quickly, since climate change is affecting all of us, wherever you sit on this wonderful planet, go back a little bit and let's talk about, obviously we mentioned earlier, we discussed that one of the applications of your tremendous AI and robotics technology in both software and hardware is in the climate space. Talk a little bit about, though, the applications, more specifically the applications, and then what goes into the technologies themselves, so our listeners and viewers can more understand, unpack the climate space applications that you have.
I talked before about putting technology in the hands of scientists.
Right.
What that usually means is that we're providing algorithms or applications or software development kits that either we or our partners create. But we felt that the way that we could really accelerate climate science is to actually build and host a supercomputer that would be dedicated to climate science. And so late last year, we announced Earth 2, and it is going to host a digital twin of the Earth. And if your listeners aren't familiar with digital twins, they are physically accurate simulations of a particular scenario. So I'll give you a super easy one. You're an automotive manufacturer. You have an assembly line. There's robotics on the assembly line. There's people power on the assembly line. And you want to get those cars assembled and out as fast as possible because that means more revenue for you. Well, in order to figure out what the best processes on the assembly floor, you'd have to spend probably hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars reworking everything and then seeing if it worked. But if you could digitally create a physically accurate simulation of your show floor, of your assembly floor,
Right.
and work and with the replicate the people power and the robotics power, you could, do scenarios all day to figure out how you could save time in this particular case. But from what we're talking about a physically accurate simulation of planet Earth. And the goal is that scientists can perform ultra high resolution climate modeling of how cities and regions are going to be impacted at a hyper local level by climate change, and be able to visually show local and global governments the risk that they're at. And the goal with Earth 2 is to spur more urgency in reacting and coming up with mitigation and adaptation solutions to what a particular city or region is facing. So Earth 2 is, we'll see some definite progress on that next year. So I just gave an example of how we're deploying our technology to tackle climate change, but it's also really important to mention how we're building the computing technology, and that's with an eye towards energy efficiency. So we aim to make every generation of GPUs faster and more energy efficient than its predecessor. So our current architecture in use is up to 20 times faster for artificial intelligence workloads than our previous generation. And compared to CPU technology, which is how AI has traditionally gotten done, NVIDIA's technology is up to 20 times more energy efficient for AI workloads than CPUs. So I talked earlier about the most green watt of energy being the one that you never have to generate, right? So when you're using our accelerated computing technology to perform a task, whether it's climate related or a financial scenario or genomic analysis, it's X factor more energy efficient than traditional computing technology that still exists in data centers today. And we actually looked at the energy savings that would be realized if we were able to switch all of those CPU-only servers running AI worldwide to NVIDIA's systems. We estimated that the world could save nearly 12 trillion watt hours of energy a year. And that's equivalent to the energy requirements of nearly 1.7 million homes in the United States. I mean, significant savings, right? So think about how AI is growing. AI training and deployment takes place in data centers. There's going to be an exponential increase in data centers. And if they're powered using more energy efficient technology, you've got an exponentially positive impact on the environment as well. So I'll just wrap up. Sorry.
So it's fascinating, Tony. So really what you're saying is, from a cultural and DNA perspective, NVIDIA is not only helping solve, as you say, some of the most intractable and hard problems of the planet, using climate change as a great platform for this discussion, but you're also yourselves working in a sustainable fashion to make sure that you're also not helping to further degrade or liquidate this precious planet that we live on, that you're doing everything in the most sustainable way possible inside your own operations and your own facilities and your own technologies as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. It's awesome. Go ahead. You were going to wrap up with something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just really wanted to talk about our operations, right? Our offices, our data centers. Data centers are a huge part of that. We are, we eat our own dog food, so to speak. We're heavy users of our own technology.
Right.
We do our own research on it, and we also run cloud-based businesses. And our data centers have become a test bed for us to be constantly improving server energy efficiency and deploying new cooling techniques. And so all of those things that we learn, we can pass on to our customers who are buying, our technology for their own data centers. And so again, that, passing on that goodness to our customers so that they can actually feel good about lowering their footprint, their climate impact when they're, needing to do this heavy computing work.
So Tony, Earth 2 sounds so fascinating. I've never even heard of it before. And I'm now more fascinated by that than almost anything else that I'm hearing about in the climate space out in the rest of the world. So tell me a little bit about when you start to think we're going to start to see results from the modeling that you're doing. And then does that mean like you're going to see if the solar, if the South Pole melts at this rate, then the water table will go up in New York or San Diego at this rate? And is that the kind of measurements and modeling that Earth 2 is going to be up to?
Those are some of the elements that will be able to be worked on in this digital twin, this replica environment, right?
Right.
Modeling some of those Arctic scenarios. I love the idea of being able to use this as a tool for school children, right? I mean, why limit creativity to just climate scientists, right? And I think that, the goal with Earth 2 is if we can make it easier for countries, cities, towns, and the government and the citizens, behind those areas to see what is happening to their city, what is happening to their region, because it's too dry, because the coastline is going to start encroaching on their pride. What creativity can be spurred, from that? And so, it really could be used as a global conversation tool, actually.
We could do modeling that will help the original planet Earth avoid catastrophic results in the future, and maybe make the adjustments that are necessary that we might not have otherwise made. Isn't that really the macro principle there?
Yeah, that is absolutely the goal. I think you nailed that properly. And a couple of the points that I would make around some of the forces that we're kind of dealing with today, climate they call it climate simulations, right? And they look at these kilometer resolutions, like how close can you get to what's actually happening, like up in the sky, or from up in the sky down to, the Earth level. And so the resolution that the technology will be able to bring to model some of these changes, could help with understanding the global water cycle. How is water moving from the ocean, sea ice, land, surface, and groundwater through the atmosphere and clouds? And changes in this whole system leads to intensifying storms and droughts. And so that's just, kind of one of tons of examples of how applying science that is being done today, but could be done at an X factor resolution better, some of the impacts that it can really have to help us understand around storms and droughts, and the danger, that the ultimate risk that we're going to be in 10, 20, X number of years from now, because this is not something that's going to go away anytime soon.
Let's just suffice it to say that Earth 2 is going to make Earth 1 a more sustainable and better place. And it's going to really help us avoid some catastrophic results that we potentially going to walk ourselves into if we don't take better care of the Earth 1.
I think that you should come and join our PR team, our Earth 2 PR team.
I'm already a fan. Wait a second. I just want to go back to something. There's something out there called a kilometer, because if there is one, I need one for my house. I want to see where we are every day, so I know how to adjust with my family and what's going on. Anyway, Tonie, you've been amazing. And for our listeners and viewers out there, to learn much more about what NVIDIA is doing, and to see and to read their new corporate social responsibility report that's coming out in June 2022, please go to www.nvidia.com, NVIDIA.com. Tonie Hansen, I'm so thankful for your time today. Thank you for making the impacts that you make, both at NVIDIA and making the world a better place.
Thanks, John. Great to meet you, and thanks for letting me share.
This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital, from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com.